My guess is that if you're a videographer, a photographer, a content creator of any kind, you probably have that one dream client that you have dreamed of working with. You know, the client that would literally be like the highlight of your career. So for some people, it's car companies, somebody like Audi. Other people, it's consumable brands, maybe like Red Bull or Cliff Bar. And then for other people, it might be tech companies, somebody like DJI or Sony, which by the way, I'm actually a massive Sony fanboy. But for me personally, I actually got into this industry originally to work on movie sets. So I went to film school, I worked on movies in LA, other places on the mainland as well as Hawaii, and eventually I realized that movies were not really the direction I wanted to go, and I actually wanted to do more freelance type work. So I tested out with a few different kinds of brands, but I specifically really wanted to work with resorts, and one brand in particular I really wanted to work with was Marriott. Now the reason I personally picked Marriott is because they're part of the Marriott Bonvoy family of properties, which if you don't know, Bonvoy manages 35 different brands. They have 8,500 properties that span over 138 countries, meaning that there's just a whole lot of opportunity. So just to give you an idea of some of the brands that Bonvoy actually manages, they have Westin, the Gaylord, the Autograph Collection, the JW Marriott, St. Regis, the Ritz-Carlton, and that's just to name a few. So I knew if I could get in with just one of the lower level brands even, then I would have an opportunity to work with a whole lot more of the brands that Bonvoy has in their property portfolio. Which by the way, if you don't know what some of these properties are that I just mentioned, you should definitely look them up because they're pretty insane. So the only problem was I had never shot with a hotel in my life, let alone a luxury resort. So of course I pretty much had zero shot of getting hired by Marriott. And to be honest, I made the entire process a lot longer and harder than it really needed to be, mostly just because I didn't even know what to do. So my goal with this video is really to show you my journey and to give you a roadmap and a blueprint of what I did personally or what I would change if I were to do this again in the future to be able to work with my dream brand of Marriott, and hopefully you can apply it to you working with your dream brand as well. And in case you're wondering, I've worked with 8 of the 35 Bonvoy properties, but I haven't worked with the St. Regis or the Ritz-Carlton, which are kind of like my dream clients. So if you know anyone over there and you want to hook it up, I really appreciate it. But without any further ado, let's jump into my 6-step process of what I personally did to go ahead and land my dream client, and hopefully you can use as well to apply to you landing your dream client as well. So just to give you an idea of how this video is going to be laid out, basically each of these steps are going to serve as a tangible checkpoint. So you'll be able to look and say, do I have this? Yes or no? If yes, then you can move on to the next step. If no, well, you got to cross that checkpoint before you get started. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's go ahead and get started. So checkpoint number 1 is honestly kind of obvious, but a lot of people brush over it. And that is, are you a hireable person? Meaning, is your content on par or better than what your dream client would post or use as ads or put on their website, right? So when you look at their Instagram or their website or their ads, or you're walking through the airport, for example, and Marriott has a giant poster on the side of the wall saying, go stay at this resort, could your content realistically be posted there or on their Instagram or website or ads or whatever? And if so, amazing, that's great. But if not, and be realistic with yourself, if not, then that means you need to go shoot some spec work that could be on par with that. So in my example, I know that Marriott has a lot of different brands, but a common theme among all of them is that they have to be clean and production quality work. At least at the time, I didn't have clean production quality work. And in fact, I didn't even have any examples of me working with a hotel in general. And listen, I know I might get some hate of people saying, well, don't do work for free or know your worth and all this stuff. But listen, I didn't have a portfolio of hotels, so I had no shot of getting hired anyways. And you got to build your portfolio. So go out and do some spec work. So this was my personal process for building my portfolio. So when I was first getting started, I didn't have a bunch of followers. I tried to do the whole free hotel collab thing, and I got denied by everybody that I reached out to. So what I personally did to build my portfolio is I was like, okay, I need to have quality content of luxury looking stays, right? So I planned a trip to Bali and I was trying to get free collab hotel stays. This was in 2018 as that was first kind of coming out. And to be honest, I didn't get any. I got denied by everybody. So I just went and booked Airbnbs myself, and I paid for it myself, and we had a few friends, so we kind of split it, and I went out and shot content of it because I was like, I just need to have something that looks like a luxury stay so I can build out my portfolio. So I did that at 2 different Airbnbs. And then also at the time I was shooting weddings. I live in Hawaii. A lot of these weddings are at fancy hotels. And sometimes if it's outer island like Kauai or Big Island or Maui, then we would have to fly over there and stay the night. And a lot of times we would stay the night at really nice hotels. So what I would do is either before we check out, I would shoot photos of the room just to kind of build a portfolio of room shots, or, walk around the hotel and just get some random shots that, potentially I could build out my portfolio with as well. Or during the sunset portion of the wedding, I would actually shoot drone shots of the resort as well, which kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Number 1, could use those drone shots in the video for the wedding, but number 2, I could use them as portfolio work for what kind of drone shots I can do for fancy hotels. So that's my story of kind of just getting scrappy and doing whatever I could to build out my portfolio. But all you need is really like 2 to 3 portfolio examples. So assuming that you have got to the point where you have 3 portfolio examples, that's checkpoint number 1. Now you can move on to stage number 2. And stage number 2 is something that most creators overlook, and that is understanding the brand's main pain point. So what do I mean by that? I mean, what does the brand need? Okay, what is something that they might need in the future that you can anticipate them needing, and how can you create a solution for it? Ultimately, you are a business owner as a content creator, and you have to create solutions for problems that clients have. That's just the base level of what you do. So I'll just give you an example from myself. I had worked with, a few Airbnbs. I've done a few free collabs as well with some resorts, and I had even worked with Westin, which we talked about as a Bonvoy property, but that was through an agency, so I've never actually worked directly with Westin, but I wanted to be Marriott approved so that I could work with any Marriott property out there. We talked about there's like 8,500, right? So in case you don't know or you're not aware, a lot of brands actually have a brand approval process to be able to work with certain content creators, especially if they're using it as advertising or on their website. So a lot of hospitality companies will have an approval process. So, IHG, Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott, all those kind of different ones. And even if the brand doesn't have like a approval process or like a list of approved vendors, a lot of times they'll have a list of people that they have worked with in the past and really like working with. So these tips are going to be relevant either way. So at the time, at least, and actually as far as I know now currently as well, this is the only video on the internet that talks about getting Marriott approved. So there was like zero information out there at the time. So what I did is I reached out to a resort that's an autograph collection resort. So we talked about how that's part of the Bonvoy properties, and I offered to do some work for free because I knew that they had an upcoming Black Friday campaign where they would need to advertise like the main appeal of their resort, which was the pool, but they didn't really have any good content around that, so they wouldn't have great content to run ads on. Now, in case you don't know, Black Friday is the time when pretty much any brand ever is blasting their biggest promotion, so not having good quality content of their main selling point was kind of a big issue for them. So transparently, my goal was that I would go there, I would do the shoot for free to kind of get my foot in the door, but then on the back end, they would be able to use my content for ads, and they would pay me a license fee to be able to use it. So that was kind of my thinking going into it, because I didn't know this brand approval process was even a thing. So long story short, they accepted the exchange, I did the shoot, I delivered the content, they absolutely loved it, and I got this email where they explained that they're actually going to be using the content for their Black Friday campaign, which was perfect. I was like, yes, that's awesome, they want to use it. But then I got an email that I didn't expect. It said, could you put your signature on this release and send it back to me? This is so we can use some of the photos that you took for the brand website, and this will be important for you if we want to get you approved as a Marriott photographer, since you'll be able to say that you already have your work in the Marriott library. This absolutely blew my mind and showed me that there's actually a back way into getting brand approved, and I accidentally stumbled upon it. So what I learned through this whole process is that in order for Marriott to even be able to use my content commercially, I had to be Marriott approved, but I couldn't be Marriott approved unless they actually needed my content. So it was like kind of a little bit of a catch-22. So from everyone I've talked to in my personal experience, I've realized that the best way to get brand approved is to actually do some work pro bono or for free, because the brand technically can't pay you unless you're brand approved. But don't just create content for free, create it with the purpose of solving a specific problem that they are going to have to use your content in ads or on their website or whatever it might be, so that they can give you the form to be Marriott approved so they can actually use your content. So I know I got a little bit ahead of myself, but that's just to prove that understanding the brand's pain point is so vital to this entire process. So once you now know what the brand's pain point is, you've passed checkpoint number 2, and you can move on to number 3, which is actually building a relationship with the brand. So how do you do that? Well, brands are run by people. So you talk like you're talking to a person. You reach out to the brand, you express that you understand their pain point, and you express that you have a way to help them overcome that, right? People like to talk to people that care about them first. So the last thing you want to do is send a generic scripted email that you blast out to everybody else and then just say, hey, I'll shoot 10 photos in exchange for $500 or whatever you say, right? That's not what you want to do. That's not how you build a relationship. And no one wants to get pitched right off the bat. Like, seriously, when's the last time you replied to a spam email? So the key here is to make it hyper personalized. Do some research on the company, do some research on the person, do some research on recent company news. It really doesn't matter. Maybe you see that they went to the same college as you. Doesn't matter what the personalization is, just show that you put in like an ounce of effort to be able to actually talk to the real person. So keep in mind that your goal with this message is not to sell them. It's actually just to get a response. You're not trying to close a deal. You're not trying to sell anything. You're just trying to get interest from the client and get a response. And a lot of times, especially if it's a bigger company, you're going to have to follow up like 3 to 5 times. I think the example of the resort that I did in the last example, I think I followed up like 3 times for that one, but but I've done as much as 5 follow-ups before. Sometimes I'll do 5 follow-ups and still not hear back, and I'll follow up like another month later or 2 months or 3 months later, and they'll respond and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry I didn't see your messages before. This is so cool. But they wouldn't have done that if I didn't continue to follow up with them, right? So the key here is don't be annoying, but do be persistent. If you have something of value to give them, a lot of times they won't respond just because they haven't seen it or they got busy or distracted or whatever. So if you actually have something of value to give the client, then they eventually will respond. Now, once you do get a response, your goal should be to get the client on a call so you could actually build that relationship further. It's extremely difficult to just build relationships off of email. So as soon as possible, get them on a call, because then you can also understand their pain point more, which is step number 2, right? So what I like to do is actually take them through a sales framework. I call it the storytelling sales framework. But if you don't know what that is, or you don't want to have frameworks, totally fine. Basically, you just have to figure out what they need, what their goal is, and why they haven't done it themselves. And once you know that information, you would have built a relationship and you would have passed checkpoint number 3, and you can move on to step number 4. And step number 4 is to pitch something that is a solution to the pain point that you just discovered that they have. Now, don't just pitch that you can take pretty pictures. Show that how your pictures actually relate to solving a pain point that the company has. So in my case, I pitched that I can take hero shots of the pool because they don't currently have it, so that they can use it in their Black Friday campaign. So I said what I can do, why it's important because they don't currently have it and they need it for advertising, and how they can do it, which is basically just hire me. So notice there, I'm not saying that I can just take content of the pool. I'm actually giving them a reason for why they need that content of the pool and why I'm the guy to do it for them. So like I said, I actually pitched this job as an exchange, but my goal was not just to do a free collab where it's just a one and done. My goal was actually to make it a long-term partnership, or at least something where they'd actually need to license my images for use in their campaign. And again, I know people are going to come at me for doing free work. You should value yourself, all this kind of stuff. But to be honest, the vast majority of my big projects and big campaigns have come from doing either free work or extremely cheap work. Like for example, I did this free job and it turned into doing jobs with 16 other resorts around the country. I've also had other campaigns where they reached out and wanted me to do a free collaboration with them, and it turned into a $7,000 deal. And then I pitched another project to them that turned into a $40,000 deal. So this kind of stuff can happen when you position yourself in the right way. Now, the problem is a lot of people make the mistake of wanting to pitch the $10,000 deal right out the gate. But the problem is the brand doesn't really know who you are. And like, think about it. Are you just going to pay some random person $10,000 off the bat? It's a little bit harder to pitch, right? So when you can grow that relationship, maybe do a smaller project to start out with, you can pitch the much bigger project later on. So at this point, you've pitched the project, the client has agreed to it. So you've passed checkpoint number 4, which brings us to step number 5, which is to absolutely crush the project. So I know this sounds like a no-brainer, but I'm going to give you some tips to actually make the client stoked to work with you and want to work with you again and again and again. So like I said, we're not just making pretty pictures, we're making pictures that are optimized for a certain result for the client. Remember, this content is not for you, it's actually for the client. So we got to figure out how to optimize for their goals. I mean, just think about it. If you can show a client that the content that you produced is performing 2 or even 3 times better than the content that they were using in the past, I mean, that's like a no-brainer to hire you in the future or even get you on a retainer. And one last thing I just want to throw on this is deliver as fast as humanly possible, especially on the first project, and over-deliver as much as you can as well. Because if our goal here truly is to build long-term relationships and work with them in the future, then why would you not want to make the client as stoked to work with you as humanly possible, right? So if you can deliver in a week, that is so much better than taking like a month to deliver. Or if you say you're going to deliver 5 photos, deliver like 8 so that they have options to choose from. And ultimately, remember, our goal is not necessarily how much content we give them, but it's how it performs. So how do you make sure that content performs well for a client? Well, what I like to do is actually go on other resorts that are either in the area or just resorts that I follow and see what kind of content performs well for them. And it's not necessarily that it gets like 1 million views organically or 10 million views or is super viral or anything like that, but more so that there's a lot of buying intent comments. So things where people are tagging their friends, or where they're like, I'm making a trip in May, or I want to go to this place so bad, you know, stuff like that. Because clients, if they start getting that on their content as well, then they'll be like, wow, like we didn't get this before. So of course this content works way better because people actually want to stay at our place, right? And they might even start getting inbound leads as well. So all that to say, your goal here is not just to make good looking pictures, but to make stuff that actually drives buying intent, people to go to the website, all that kind of stuff. Find content that's worked in the past for other companies, try to emulate it, put your own spin on it. And that is basically the secret to success for being able to get those types of results for other clients. Obviously, as well, you want to be creative. So don't just copy them, but use it as kind of like inspiration for what could possibly work in the future, as well as trends, right? So that being said, once you've done the shoot, once you've absolutely crushed it, you've passed checkpoint number 5, which brings us to step number 6. So here's the deal. Most creatives will stop at number 5 and just leave it at that. And that is why you don't get retainer projects or ascension deals or anything like that. So step number 6 is to actually ask for a post-shoot review. So about 3 to 4 weeks after you deliver the content, you want to schedule a review session, or maybe even just do an email exchange with a client where you can ask them questions like, how'd you like how the content performed? How'd you like working with me? Is there communication you think could have been done better? Like, any question you can get to get a little bit of feedback so that you can adjust in the future is really good. But in doing so, you'll also be able to see if the client really likes the work that you did. And if so, you can, number 1, ask them for a review, and number 2, pitch an ascension offer or a retainer. Because if the client really liked what you produced, then obviously they probably want to work with you more in the future. Now, just so you know, they're not always going to be ready right off the bat to work with you again, but at least you'll put that seed in their mind so they will be potentially in the future and you'll be top of mind. Now, the last thing, and this is super ninja, not many people do this, is on this review call, you want to ask for referrals. So all you do is say, hey, would you by chance know anybody else that potentially needs results like this? And especially if you're working with a big organization, somebody like Marriott, they might say, oh yeah, I have like 10 other friends that are also marketing managers at these amazing resorts that also need something like this. I can give you a referral. And at that point, what happens is they give you a warm referral to their colleagues. And instead of cold outreaching and getting ignored, now their friend is referring you to them. So they immediately have that connection and know that it works because they're being referred by a friend. Now, sometimes you can do things like commission kickbacks or just financial incentive or discounts or whatever. If they give you referrals, you can do all kinds of different things. Or you could do none of that and just, send them a gift card or, some sort of present later on that just is like a thank you. But there's all kinds of different ways you can do this, but just asking for the referral is going to massively increase your business just because they know the exact people that need your content anyways. Now, obviously there's a whole lot more that goes into all of these steps that I can't really cover in this short YouTube video, but I hope this gives you a good roadmap and overview of how I was able to work with my dream brand, and hopefully you can apply it so that you can start working with your dream brand as well. Now, if you're in this place where you're kind of a freelancer and you're like, I want to start working with my dream brand, getting paid what I deserve to get paid, and I'm tired of trying to figure it all out myself, I actually have a one-on-one mentorship program where I help creators do exactly this process I just described, but obviously give them the entire system as well. It's a system I call precision prospecting, which basically goes A to Z of how to land your dream client, how to charge what you want to charge, how to scale your business, and even how to hire team members and make systems and automations to make this whole process a whole lot easier for you. So if that sounds like something you need, then go ahead and click the link in the description below to schedule in a call with a member of my team. He'll walk you through our entire process of precision prospecting. And hopefully, if you can apply it to your company, me and you will be working together here very soon. So if that sounds like you, go ahead and click the link in the description below. Other than that, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If so, give a massive subscribe and like to the video. I got a bunch of other videos on the channel as well. They cover things like building out offers, how to price yourself, how to pitch brands, like all that kind of stuff. So go ahead and check out those videos as well. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.